Now, despite record-breaking inequality and poverty in this country that I was talking about earlier in the show, you wouldn't know it exists when you look at the free flow of cash and glitz pouring into politics. Take a look at the donors going to a fundraiser for President Obama in LA last night. Now, despite the tough economy, supporters still shelled out for recent Obama events from Seattle to San Diego over 2 days, upwards of $5 million. Supporters paying up to the legal limit of close to 36 grand to hear Obama speak or have dinner or whatever. Now, it's a sum that many Americans right at that fundraiser could never envision affording. Take a listen to a protester outside.
You see that restaurant? He's charging $35,000 for people to go and be part of it. Does our community even make $35,000 a year? No. Many of us don't even make that. So Obama, you need to come out here and talk to the community.
And it's not just the communities of those protesters that you saw. A new report shows that city budgets are getting crushed, forcing them to cut more workers and services. And at the same time, corporate chiefs are saying that China is more business friendly than the U.S. Peter Schiff is here to tell me how all of this is possible. Hi, Peter. Thanks for being on the show. So,
hi, thanks for having me on.
My first question to you. During these tough economic times, Obama's approval ratings are 42%. Who is shelling out 36 grand for an Obama fundraiser and why?
Well, who are the 42% that are still approving of President Obama? I mean, these guys have got to wake up and see the reality.
Well, as far as my other question, who's shelling out all that dough towards his campaign?
Well, look, there are obviously some people that are able to make money off of this system. Unfortunately, not nearly enough. That's the problem. And there are people with money in the country who, don't understand what's going on, and so they believe that Obama is actually going to help the country. And there are other people that know that he's not, but they have a vested interest in the programs that he's perpetuating. Many of those programs are responsible for impoverishing the majority of Americans, but they enrich his contributors.
Like what? Give me one example that you think is the best example of what you're saying.
Well, I think there's a lot of policies that are perpetuating the financial bubble, that are perpetuating Wall Street. And so I think a lot of financiers are benefiting from the reckless policies. Certainly, a lot of the industries that government drives money towards, education, healthcare, those sectors are bloated. And there's a lot of money that's being spent there in a very wasteful manner. But obviously, there are people who benefit from that wasteful spending because that's the source of their income. So there is an entire constituency that is feeding off the public trough. And, Barack Obama is there to fill it up. And so there are plenty of people that benefit from it, and they help reelect them. And, of course, you've got, the drug companies, I think, pharmaceutical companies benefit, large brokerage firms benefit. There are a number of companies that I think are direct beneficiaries of a lot of these government programs. A lot of regulations that stifle competition benefit the companies that are being protected by competition. But I think the entire economy suffers from these big government policies.
So, you've run for office. Do you think that this is why Obama's campaign election efforts have not been as impacted by the economy as one would believe? Exactly what you're talking about?
No, I mean, I think they are impacted. I think a lot of people are becoming disillusioned with the president. That's why his support is falling, and I expect his support to continue to fall. But that's not going to diminish his ability to raise money. He's still going to raise money from the people who profit from the status quo, even if the status quo is undermining the strength of the U.S. economy. And of course, as the government is able to help ruin the economy and create dependency, people who become dependent on government checks are now more likely to vote for the people who are signing those checks. They don't connect the dots. They don't understand that the government is responsible for their plight, but they buy into the rhetoric that the government will solve the problems, which is why the government wants to perpetuate poverty because it's easy to get the votes of the impoverished when you're the one that is providing them with funds.
Speaking of poverty, Peter, city finances are just getting totally crushed by the economic downturn. Just a new report that came out from the National League of Cities today says that cities ended their 2010 fiscal year with the largest year-over-year reductions in revenues and spending in the history of the survey. Why are cities getting creamed now?
Why aren't they what?
Why are they getting creamed now? Why are their finances getting so crushed right now?
Well, the whole country's getting crushed. I mean, the cities aren't going to be immune from that. Remember, the cities are drawing their revenues from their tax base, and their tax base is being eroded. Property values are falling. People aren't paying property taxes. Incomes are diminished. You're getting less sales tax revenue. There's all sorts of ways that cities and states are going to get squeezed from this recession. The real problem is going to be when interest rates start to rise, because a lot of these municipalities or states are surviving by borrowing. And when the cost of borrowing goes up, it hasn't happened yet, but eventually it is going to happen. And then you're going to have a double whammy, because it's going to cost the cities a lot more to borrow money, but they're also going to have to borrow a lot more, because higher interest rates are also going to, at least in the short run, further undermine this consumer debt-based bubble economy that we're living in.
So, I mean, right now, the impact of the economy on the cities means that they're continuing to cut personnel. They can't invest in infrastructure. They're cutting services. So are you saying that this is just going to get worse if interest rates go up?
Yeah, it is going to get worse. I mean, interest rates need to go up, but not for the reason that they're going to go up. The real reason they're going to go up now is because inflation drives them up, because the government is destroying our money and our savings. I mean, it would be better if we could have higher real interest rates where the Fed gets ahead of the curve and we can have more savings and investment. But still, that is going to pressure the debtors. And to the extent that governments have too much debt, higher interest rates are going to be problematic. That is why the cure is going to be so painful for certain segments of the economy. But ultimately, if we can cure the economy, we can have much more robust economic growth, which ultimately will benefit the states, even if in the short run they are negatively impacted by the increased cost of servicing their debts, which is also why some of these municipalities or states are going to end up defaulting on some of that debt in order for it to be manageable.
I mean, it just doesn't seem like how much worse could it get? It's already so bad. I mean, what you're calling for.
It could get a lot. It could get a lot worse. I mean, we really see nothing yet. I mean, yeah, I mean, things are bad. People are having a hard time getting jobs. But the people that still have jobs, I mean, yeah, they're getting squeezed a little bit, but nothing like it's going to be. No, I think it's going to get a lot worse when you really see a precipitous decline in the value of the dollar. That's really going to kick it in, because that's going to lead to big, big increases in consumer prices on basic necessities, which are really going to crush American families. And when you see a big increase in interest rates, I mean, this is going to get much, much worse. I mean, we're really still in the calm before the storm.
But when do you think that storm will hit? Because we've seen so much international turmoil with, for example, what's going on in Europe, that the dollar, people have ran to the dollar in recent times.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's buying us some extra time. Because people are more worried about Europe right now than America, and so our day of reckoning is being postponed as a result of that. But ultimately, by allowing the U.S. economy to go deeper into debt, it means our day of reckoning is going to be that much more dramatic when it comes. And, you know, I think that one of the catalysts could be some sort of resolution to the European situation where the world can breathe a sigh of relief and decide that, okay, the worst is behind Europe and things are going to improve, because then they're going to focus their attention back on the U.S. because we've done nothing to improve our situation. Our fiscal imbalances continue to deteriorate.
So what's better for Europe could be worse for the U.S. Speaking of worse for the U.S., well, the public sector is hemorrhaging employees with these cities and states being really impacted by the economy. The private sector isn't exactly picking up the slack. And we just heard the CEO of Coke saying that the U.S. is less business-friendly than China because of the U.S. political gridlock and the tax structure, which he says is antiquated. Peter, is it easier to do business in China than the U.S.?
Well, I've been saying that for years. That's why we're investing more money over there than we are in the U.S. I often joke that, if the government would simply get out of the way and give capitalism a chance, that I know it'll work, because, it's working pretty good in communist China. So I think it would work in America if we gave it a try. And, so we need to get rid of a lot of these government sector jobs. I mean, that's part of the solution. The government jobs are a drain on the economy. We can't afford them. So a lot of government employees need to lose their jobs, but we want them to get productive jobs in the private sector. The reason they're not is because the government has erected so many barriers to employment. The government has made it so much more difficult for businesses to grow and expand and hire people. I mean, the regulations, many of the regulations that have been written specifically punish employers who hire. There are all sorts of taxes and fees that are directly tied to hiring people. And probably as far as litigation, you have all sorts of litigation risk when you hire somebody. It is very easy to sue your employer. If you get fired, it's very easy to sue. And so businesses want to mitigate the cost of litigation, and the way they do that is limit the number of people they hire.
So it's kind of a catch-22 because people are getting laid off, but there's not jobs for them. But you say that businesses don't have the necessary, way to get through regulations in order to hire more people. And tax holidays that the government is talking about have been shown to not actually create jobs. But we're going to have to leave the discussion there for now. That was Peter Schiff, president. I'm sorry, Peter, we're totally out of time. That's president of Euro Pacific Capital. Thanks for being on the show.